For decades, the name Vince Gill has occupied a rare and revered space within the landscape of American country music, representing a standard of excellence that few artists ever managed to achieve. Long before the recent challenges quietly began reshaping his world, he was universally celebrated not merely for his extraordinary vocal control and virtuoso guitar playing, but for an innate warmth that earned him the enduring moniker of the nicest guy in Nashville. While the modern music industry frequently thrives on sensational headlines, manufactured controversies, and loud public spectacles, his career moved forward on an entirely different frequency. He built his lasting legacy patiently, brick by brick, through a relentless dedication to his craft, professional reliability, and an authentic humility that resonated deeply with fans across multiple generations. Yet beneath this seemingly untouchable facade of enduring stability and calm grace, the past few years have introduced a profound series of personal trials that have fundamentally tested his resilience. It did not begin with a sudden career collapse or a dramatic scandal, but rather with a series of intensely private heavy burdens that required immense emotional endurance behind closed doors. As his wife, Amy Grant, confronted one life-threatening medical emergency after another, Vince found himself navigating uncharted emotional waters that completely reconfigured his daily priorities. The sheer accumulation of these unforeseen stressors has inevitably introduced a quiet weight to his life, one that casual observers are only now beginning to fully recognize and appreciate. Understanding this current chapter requires looking beyond the glossy awards and chart statistics to examine the deeply human resilience of a man who has always chosen quiet dignity over noisy self-pity, even when the ground beneath him began to shift dramatically. Long before he became a household name and a permanent fixture of country music royalty, Vince Gill's musical journey was defined by quiet uncertainty, persistent hard work, and a gradual discovery of his own artistic identity. When he stepped into the spotlight as a member of Pure Prairie League during a critical transition period for the band, he quickly proved that he was far more than just a temporary replacement singer. His voice possessed a distinct, melancholic softness that instantly cut through the standard country rock arrangements of the era, bringing a fresh and unexpected emotional depth to their recorded material. The breakout success of songs like Let Me Love You Tonight proved his commercial viability, yet behind the scenes, he was still searching for a permanent artistic home where his unique sensibilities would be fully understood. This ongoing quest for musical belonging eventually led him away from the band and into the orbit of Rodney Crowell's legendary Circle, joining the group known as the Cherry Bombs. While this move was far from a guaranteed ticket to superstardom and carried considerable professional risk during a slowing momentum phase in his career, it provided something infinitely more valuable than instant fame. It granted him direct proximity to Nashville's inner creative core, allowing him to forge vital relationships with industry heavyweights like Tony Brown, who would eventually play a monumental role in shaping his signature sound. This formative era taught him invaluable lessons about patience, persistence, and the necessity of refining his songwriting craft in smaller venues rather than hastily chasing fleeting commercial trends. The foundational years spent performing in intimate spaces, such as the historic Bluebird Cafe, played an instrumental role in shaping the artist the world would eventually come to know and deeply admire. During those quiet evenings, far away from the blinding lights of massive arena tour and heavy media scrutiny, Vince was actively forced to confront his own internal limitations, most notably a persistent lack of confidence in his natural vocal abilities. In fact, early producers frequently attempted to compensate for this perceived vulnerability by pushing the instrumentation much further forward in the mix, inadvertently masking the subtle emotional nuances that would later become his greatest trademark. Yet rather than becoming discouraged by the slow progression of his solo releases, he used those years to diligently hone his craft, treating every small stage as a classroom for emotional authenticity. This deliberate choice to prioritize songwriting substance over immediate chart dominance created a strong foundation of professional respect within the Nashville community, ensuring that his eventual breakthrough would be built on solid artistic ground rather than temporary hype. When Tony Brown finally took the helm as his producer, he made a courageous and defining decision that would completely alter the trajectory of Vince's career by bringing his soft, expressive voice directly to the forefront of the production. That singular choice eliminated the unnecessary sonic barriers that had previously muted his emotional impact, allowing listeners to experience the true purity of his delivery for the very first time. The resulting milestone, When I Call Your Name, bypassed cheap production spectacles entirely, relying instead on raw emotional clarity to connect with audiences on a profound level and earning him the widespread critical acclaim he had quietly worked years to achieve. Even as Vince Gill reached the absolute pinnacle of his professional success, collecting prestigious awards and commanding massive sold-out crowds across the country, the most intimate part of his personal life was quietly beginning to fracture behind the scenes. His long-standing marriage to Janice Oliver appeared from the outside to be an ideal partnership rooted in shared creative ambitions, mutual understanding of the demanding touring lifestyle, and a deep appreciation for the music industry they both inhabited. However, the invisible pressures of sudden superstardom and relentless professional expansion were slowly pulling them in fundamentally different directions, creating emotional distances that could not be bridged by chart-topping singles or golden trophies. As his schedule grew increasingly demanding to accommodate the soaring trajectory of his career, Vince found himself spending extended months away from home, caught in the relentless cycle of recording sessions, promotional press tour, and grueling live performances. The exact same unwavering dedication and discipline that allowed him to build a legendary musical legacy also inadvertently starved his primary relationship of the daily presence and emotional nourishment it desperately needed to survive. It was never a single catastrophic event or a dramatic public explosion that fractured the union, but rather a slow, painful accumulation of missed milestones, emotional exhaustion, and the quiet drift that occurs when two people are evolving at vastly different speeds. The eventual dissolution of the marriage brought a deeply private grief, accompanied by the difficult reality of adjusting to life where he was no longer part of a continuous daily family structure with his daughter Jenny. Stepping away from that shared household introduced a heavy, invisible burden that could never be measured in Billboard charts, industry accolades, or public statements, forcing him to quietly process a profound personal loss while continuing to perform under the unforgiving glare of the public spotlight. The emotional fallout of this significant life transition inevitably bled into his creative output, resulting in a noticeable and profound shift in the tone, depth, and vulnerability of his songwriting. The material he released during this introspective period felt remarkably lived in, moving far beyond standard Nashville storytelling to capture the genuine complexities of heartbreak, personal failure, and quiet resilience. Music critics immediately recognized a distinct evolution in his lyricism, noting that his songs carried an undeniable aura of hard-earned honesty that could only originate from authentic lived emotional pain rather than crafted commercial formulas. Without ever explicitly exploiting his personal life for sensational headlines, Vince used his music as a therapeutic outlet to process feelings of loss, guilt, and eventual acceptance that defied easy resolution. There was a poignant maturity woven into these melodies, reflecting a man who was actively making peace with his own limitations and attempting to find grace amidst the unpredictable turbulence of his changing world. This musical evolution did not alienate his fanbase, rather it deepened their connection to him, establishing a profound sense of shared empathy between the artist and his listeners as they heard their own quiet struggles mirrored in his gentle voice. It was during this delicate phase of personal rebuilding and artistic deepening that his path crossed with Amy Grant, setting the stage for a romance that would profoundly alter the entire trajectory of his adult life. Yet this new beginning did not arrive in a vacuum. It carried its own unique set of complications, public pressures, and intense scrutiny from fans who found it difficult to separate the timing of their union from the painful conclusion of his previous marriage. Stepping into a relationship with Amy Grant placed Vince under an intense microscope, as the public and media dissected every detail of their respective pasts while they attempted to build something meaningful together. The early stages of their romance were heavily shadowed by outside opinions and unnecessary judgment, forcing both artists to navigate personal vulnerability while managing the relentless expectations of millions of devoted fans. However, what ultimately defined their relationship was not the complicated circumstances of its origin, but the remarkable way they managed to anchor each other amidst the swirling chaos of the entertainment industry. Amy entered his life not just as a romantic partner, but as a stabilizing force who shared his deep appreciation for a quieter, more grounded existence far away from the superficial demands of celebrity culture. Together, they forged a blended family life that prioritized genuine human connection, spiritual grounding, and mutual respect over the frantic pace that had previously dominated both of their professional lives. For many years following their wedding, Vince and Amy appeared to have successfully defied the notoriously fragile nature of celebrity marriages, building a peaceful sanctuary that seemed entirely immune to the pressures of their demanding careers. They supported each other's creative endeavors with mutual admiration, often collaborating on music and tour that highlighted their undeniable chemistry and shared values. It was a golden era of stability, offering Vince a hard-won sense of emotional peace after years of personal turmoil and relentless professional striving. Neither of them could possibly anticipate that this hard-earned peace was merely a prelude to an unprecedented series of medical storms that would soon test the absolute limits of their endurance. The illusion of permanent stability was shattered on an ordinary day in 2020, beginning with a routine medical evaluation that Vince underwent simply because he experienced mild shortness of breath while climbing a flight of stairs. Fortunately, his own cardiac checkup delivered exceptionally reassuring results, with his physician jokingly attributing his minor breathlessness to being slightly out of shape rather than any underlying heart pathology. However, in a twist of fate that would alter the course of their lives forever, the doctor casually suggested that Amy undergo a precautionary screening as well, largely due to her known family history of cardiovascular complications. Amy initially resisted the suggestion, feeling entirely healthy, vibrant, and possessing zero physical symptoms that would indicate any hidden danger lurking beneath the surface. Reluctantly agreeing to appease the medical team just to be safe, she underwent specialized imaging that revealed a shocking and potentially fatal condition known as PAPVR, a rare congenital heart defect that severely disrupts normal blood circulation. According to the attending specialists, this silent anomaly was dangerously progressive and would have inevitably led to catastrophic medical emergency if left untreated for much longer. The diagnosis left no room for hesitation or alternative therapies. Open-heart surgery was the only viable path forward to secure her future, introducing an immediate and terrifying disruption to their normal daily routines. Compounding the psychological terror of the situation was the harsh reality of the global health climate at the time, which enforced stringent hospital restrictions that entirely barred Vince from being physically present inside the facility during the high-risk operation. For a man whose entire existence had been built around showing up, supporting loved ones, and standing by his family through every trial, being forced into helpless isolation while his wife's life hung in the balance was an agonizing psychological torture, unlike anything he had ever experienced before. The agonizing hours spent waiting away from the hospital forced Vince into a state of profound helplessness, stripping away the illusion of control and confronting him with the ultimate fragility of human life. When the procedure finally concluded and he was permitted to re-enter the recovery room to see his wife, she was still heavily sedated, resting quietly beneath the sterile lights of the intensive care unit. He later reflected on that deeply emotional moment with characteristic understatement, choosing to describe the overwhelming flood of relief not through dramatic proclamations, but through the quiet, steady realization that she had successfully navigated the darkest hurdle of the ordeal. Seeing her resting peacefully signaled a definitive end to the immediate crisis, washing away years of accumulated professional anxieties, and instantly shrinking his entire universe down to the simple vital fact that she was alive and healing. When the global pandemic brought the entire music industry to a grinding halt, offering an enforced pause on touring schedules and promotional obligations, Vince embraced the unexpected stillness with absolute dedication. He seamlessly transitioned from a celebrated country music icon into a full-time caregiver, managing the intricate, unglamorous, and physically demanding realities of post-operative recovery that adoring fans never get to witness from the concert seats. What resonated most deeply with him during this intimate chapter was not the scale of the medical trauma, but the extraordinary grace, quiet resilience, and lack of self-pity with which Amy approached every single milestone of her physical rehabilitation. She treated the healing process not as an insurmountable mountain, but as a series of small, manageable steps forward, reinforcing the deep mutual respect that had always served as the bedrock of their marriage. Had this been the final chapter of their medical trials, it would have already stood as a monumental test of character, but fate had unfortunately reserved an even more complex and unpredictable series of challenges for the couple. Just as Amy began regaining her strength, and the horizon finally looked clear enough for them to contemplate a gradual return to normal life, a completely unexpected and terrifying accident occurred out on the open road. During what was supposed to be a casual, refreshing afternoon bicycle ride with friends, Amy hit a hidden road hazard, lost control of her bike, and suffered a violent, high-speed crash that rendered her unconscious on the asphalt. Even though she was wearing a protective helmet, the impact of the fall was severe enough to cause extensive trauma, requiring immediate emergency response hospitalization and a prolonged, uncertain recovery period. The injuries extended far beyond standard cuts, scrapes, or broken bones, culminating in a serious traumatic brain injury that immediately scrambled their daily reality and plunged the household back into acute crisis. For Vince, the required pivot was instantaneous and absolute. He cleared his professional calendar, canceled lucrative concert appearances without a moment of hesitation, and stationed himself permanently by her bedside to prioritize her neurological recovery above all else. Unlike the structured timeline of a surgical intervention, a traumatic brain injury offers no predictable roadmaps, no guaranteed recovery milestones, and no easy answers for families trying to piece their lives back together. Amy later spoke candidly about the profound emotional exhaustion that accompanied the healing process, noting how entirely frustrating it was to watch normal cognitive functions slow down while she grappled with identity loss and profound uncertainty about her future capabilities. For an artist whose entire life purpose, self-worth, and cultural contribution had been intrinsically tied to her vibrant stage presence and vocal artistry, facing the prospect of permanent neurological change was a heavy psychological burden to bear. Throughout this harrowing period of neurological uncertainty, Vince's unwavering stability served as the ultimate anchor for his shaken wife, proving that his supportive nature extended far beyond romantic platitudes into the trenches of genuine adversity. He steadfastly refused to panic, push for unrealistic recovery timelines, or allow frustration to poison their shared space, choosing instead to anchor himself entirely in the present moment. Whenever Amy faced overwhelming moments of despair or cognitive fatigue during her darkest days of recovery, he offered simple, grounding wisdom, gently reminding her that life's most difficult chapters can only ever be conquered one single step at a time. This unflinching steadiness was delivered without theatrical performance or desperate attempts at toxic positivity. It was simply the authentic, calm reassurance of a man who understood that love requires active endurance when the music stops playing. As his own performance schedule slowly resumed on a limited basis, the internal hierarchy of his life had undergone a permanent and irreversible transformation, ensuring that his career would forever remain secondary to the health and well-being of his wife. Yet, just as they began carving out a new, modified rhythm of daily life to accommodate these lingering neurological realities, the universe decided to test their endurance once again with an entirely new wave of compounding medical complications. What makes the modern narrative surrounding Vince Gill so uniquely heavy is not the presence of a single dramatic hardship, but the relentless compounding accumulation of multiple intersecting crises that refuse to grant them a lasting moment of uninterrupted peace. Life continued to stack challenge upon challenge, transforming their golden years into an ongoing endurance test that required constant vigilance, emotional adaptation, and deep reservoirs of patience. The lingering cognitive effects of the bicycle accident did not simply vanish with the passing of time, weaving themselves into the fabric of their daily routine in ways that required constant, subtle accommodation from both partners. Memory lapses became an unavoidable part of their shared reality, occasionally manifesting as subtle hesitations or noticeable gaps that interrupted casual conversations and forced them to adapt in real time. During a promotional media interview where Amy was gently asked to recall specific chronological details from the early years of their marriage, she openly and gracefully admitted that those particular memories felt hazy and inaccessible due to the trauma. Rather than allowing that vulnerable moment to become awkward or distressing, Vince seamlessly stepped into the conversational gap, filling in the missing historical details, clarifying timelines, and keeping the dialogue flowing effortlessly without ever drawing uncomfortable attention to what had changed. It was a poignant demonstration of an unspoken partnership built on deep protective love. Operating with such intuitive precision that it felt almost like an expertly choreographed dance between two souls who knew each other completely. When Vince lightheartedly referred to this adaptive dynamic as a tag team during a subsequent conversation, it masked a profound underlying truth that required perpetual emotional vigilance and daily patience to maintain. This was not a temporary hurdle they could simply wait out until things returned to normal. It was the new normal, demanding that they rewrite the rules of their partnership on a daily basis to honor the love they shared. Navigating memory loss and cognitive shifts requires a rare brand of selflessness, one that strips away ego entirely and replaces it with an unwavering commitment to safeguarding the dignity and comfort of the person you cherish most. As if managing the neurological aftermath of a severe traumatic brain injury was not enough of an emotional mountain to climb, Amy was soon confronted with an entirely separate medical crisis that directly attacked the core of her professional identity. A troublesome cyst developed in her throat, threatening her vocal cords and necessitating complex surgery followed by a grueling rehabilitation process that forced her to literally relearn how to sing from the foundation up. For a legendary vocal artist whose entire life, cultural legacy, and emotional expression have been channeled through her God-given voice, facing the potential loss of that instrument is a psychological blow that goes far beyond simple physical pain. It forces a terrifying reevaluation of personal identity, self-worth, and existential purpose, plunging the artist into a dark night of the soul where the future feels entirely opaque and terrifying. Once again, Vince was right there beside her through every agonizing vocal exercise and tearful breakthrough, shedding his famous musician persona to become the rock-solid pillar of unconditional support she needed to survive the ordeal. His presence was not that of a famous collaborator offering professional advice, but of a devoted husband holding space for his wife's grief, fear, and determination as she worked tirelessly to reclaim her musical voice. To compound these staggering trials even further, Amy subsequently required major shoulder surgery to address lingering structural issues, adding yet another arduous physical rehabilitation timeline to their already overflowing list of medical battles. Individually, any single one of these health crises would have been considered a major life disruption for a typical family. Experienced back-to-back over a compressed window of time, they created an exhausting, prolonged climate where uncertainty reigned supreme. For Vince, this meant living in a perpetual state of quiet alertness, constantly bracing for the next unseen obstacle while gracefully restructuring his entire professional world around the unpredictable medical needs of his partner. What makes this ongoing chapter so remarkably difficult for outside fans and media commentators to fully comprehend is the fact that Vince Gill's public demeanor has remained almost miraculously unchanged throughout the entirety of these compounding personal storms. He still walks onto the stage with the same calm grace, delivers his iconic guitar solos with effortless precision, and carries himself with the quiet, unassuming dignity that people have come to expect from him over the span of several decades. Yet the stark reality hidden behind that polished public image is radically different from the serene picture fans project onto him, shaped entirely by years of heavy behind-the-scenes caregiving and emotional labor. The past few years have systematically required him to step into a demanding, high-stakes role that offers zero public applause, no Grammy nominations, and no standing ovations from adoring crowds. It is the quiet, grinding responsibility of being a primary caregiver, a role that reshapes a human being not through a single cinematic moment of heroism, but through the endless, unglamorous repetition of patience, vigilance, and quiet endurance. This brings us directly to the core concern that lingers in the minds of those who truly understand the depth of what he has been carrying. Not a fear that Vince Gill will fail in any visible professional capacity, but a deep, protective worry born from the realization that he has absorbed so much pain without ever letting it spill over into public view. Human endurance, no matter how legendary or deeply rooted in spiritual faith, is never truly infinite, raising pressing questions about the hidden toll that years of unrelenting stress and caregiving take on the strongest among us. When you carefully tally the sheer volume of trauma, surgery, brain injury rehabilitation, memory adaptation, and vocal recovery he has absorbed while simultaneously maintaining a demanding national touring career, the fundamental question is never about his capability, but about how long a human heart can carry such a staggering weight before something inside begins to quietly fray. Sheer magnitude of Vince's recent life experiences invites a deeper, more empathetic reflection on the true cost of maintaining a flawless public image while fighting invisible battles in the private sanctuary of home. Throughout his storied career, he has written countless timeless anthems about heartbreak, loss, perseverance, and grace, yet nothing he ever penned in the safety of a songwriting room could rival the raw, lived-in emotional depth of the life he has quietly managed over the past several years. He didn't ask for this compounding series of medical crises, nor did he ever attempt to weaponize his family's private suffering for cheap sympathy or sensational media attention, choosing instead to handle every single blow with characteristic grace and old-school Southern dignity. This fierce protection of his wife's privacy and dignity during her most vulnerable moments speaks volumes about the depth of his character, revealing a man whose loyalty and love run immeasurably deeper than any chart success or industry accolade ever could. Yet this admirable tendency to shoulder burdens in complete silence often fools casual observers into underestimating the profound exhaustion that must accumulate when you are constantly serving as the emotional and physical anchor for someone else's healing. In a culture that frequently celebrates loud displays of resilience and dramatic public confessions, Vince's quiet, steadfast approach stands as a refreshing anomaly, reminding us that true strength is rarely loud or boastful. It is found in the quiet hospital waiting rooms, in the gentle repetition of forgotten memories, in the silent holding of a hand during physical therapy, and in the unwavering choice to show up every single day with a calm smile. As fans continue to watch him step under the stage lights and lose themselves in the timeless magic of their favorite songs, they are witnessing an artist whose soul has been thoroughly tempered by the fires of real-life adversity. When we evaluate the totality of Vince Gill's extraordinary life and career up to this present moment, it becomes abundantly clear that his greatest legacy will not be defined solely by the impressive number of CMA awards sitting on his mantle or the millions of records sold worldwide. Instead, his truest legacy will be written in the quiet, unrecorded moments of profound devotion, showing the world what it truly means to love someone through sickness, uncertainty, neurological trauma, and identity reconstruction without ever demanding a single round of applause. The emotional resilience he has demonstrated in the face of relentless adversity proves that the nickname "the nicest guy in Nashville" was never just a superficial marketing label, but an accurate reflection of a deeply compassionate and noble soul. While the music industry will continue to generate new stars, fleeting trends, and manufactured headlines, the quiet integrity of Vince Gill remains an enduring lighthouse for anyone striving to navigate life's inevitable storms with grace and unyielding loyalty. The toll that these recent years have taken on him may never be fully measured in public interviews or televised specials, but it is precisely that quiet sacrifice that makes his ongoing artistic contributions feel so much more resonant today. Every time he steps up to a microphone and sings about love, loss, and endurance now, his voice carries a richer, more profound weight, shaped by the undeniable reality of a man who has walked through the valley and emerged with his heart intact. For millions of devoted followers who have tracked his journey from the early days of Pure Prairie League to his current status as country music royalty, watching him navigate this heavy chapter only deepens their profound admiration for the man behind the music. Ultimately, Vince Gill's story is no longer just about the songs that made him famous, but about the quiet, unyielding strength that kept his world together when everything else threatened to fall apart, securing his place as a true legend of the human spirit.